Hi, my name is Isa. They always said I was quiet. The kind of girl who blends into office carpets and coffee stains. I didn't argue. I was quiet. But silence isn't emptiness. It's a choice. A shield. Especially when you spend 5 years working under someone who never once looked up from their desk when you spoke. My name is Aisha. I used to work in the corner cubicle at Maven Strategies, a boutique marketing firm that liked to call itself the brain behind brands. I had dreams bigger than the elevator we all rode in every morning, dreams that pulsed behind my teeth every time I bit back an idea, a suggestion, a strategy. Because I knew what would happen. I'd say it. They'd nod. Then my boss, Maria, would say the same thing 10 minutes later with a different verb, and suddenly the room would clap. I watched it happen again and again, until I stopped speaking altogether. But I never stopped thinking. The idea came to me during one of those 7 p.m. evenings when everyone else had gone home, and the printer hummed like it was sighing with me. I was looking at a proposal we were about to pitch to a mid-level sports brand. It was basic, flat, predictable. I knew it wouldn't win the account. So I stayed. I reworked the whole deck, added insights about emerging trends, influencer engagement in second-tier cities, and redesigned the layout. I printed it out and slipped it under Maria's door with a note that simply said, "Thought this might help." The next morning, she presented my deck to the client as if it were her own. I stood in the back of the conference room with a stale croissant in one hand and a smile that didn't quite reach my eyes. The client clapped. They signed. Maria beamed. "We're on a roll," she told the team. "When you trust your instincts, good things happen." She didn't look at me once. That was the moment something inside me tilted. Not snapped, not broke, just tilted like a painting on a wall that no one notices until it crashes. I started keeping a journal. Not a diary, not emotional rants, just records. Of meetings. Of timelines. Of which client came from which idea. I created folders on my home computer. Labeled them by quarter. By campaign. By concept. I built a library of proof. Not to punish anyone, at least not yet, but to remind myself that I existed. That I had built something. That I mattered. The turning point came in the form of a merger announcement. Maria called it an exciting opportunity. I saw it for what it was, a slow dissolving of our identity into a larger, blander firm that specialized in volume over vision. Over drinks at the bar downstairs, she whispered to one of the partners, "I'm not worried about the creatives. They'll either adapt or fizzle out. Honestly, I think Aisha could be let go during the shift. She's quiet." The bartender was a friend. He told me everything. That night, I didn't sleep. I sat on my balcony watching the streetlights flicker and fade, and I wrote a list. Not a pros and cons list. A what-if list. What if I pitched the clients myself? What if I showed them the actual creative behind the campaigns? What if I wasn't quiet anymore? For weeks, I prepared in secret. Every night after work, I freelanced under a pseudonym, testing ideas, refining pitches, building up courage. The clients didn't know it was me behind the polished emails and innovative concepts. But they liked what they saw. When one of the fashion brands requested a video call, I almost declined. But curiosity won. I turned on my camera. The client's eyes widened. "Wait, you're Aisha? From Maven." I didn't lie. I just smiled and said, "Not anymore." 2 weeks later, I handed in my resignation. Maria barely looked up. "Good luck out there," she said. "It's a jungle." I nodded and walked out without a word. But in my pocket was a flash drive with 2 years' worth of ideas that hadn't seen the light of day. My jungle was about to grow roots. I called it Ember and Slate. Just me at first. A name that sounded like fire and foundation. I set up a small office in the back of a co-working space above a bookstore. It smelled like old pages and new beginnings. I built the website myself. Bought a second-hand laptop. Pitched 3 clients the same week. All of them said yes. It wasn't flashy. It wasn't loud. But it was mine. Within 3 months, I had 5 full-time clients and my first intern, Mira, who asked me during the interview, "What made you start this?" I paused. Then I said, silence. Too much of it. She didn't ask anything else. She just smiled and started on Monday. I didn't tell anyone at Maven where I had gone. I didn't need to. But I knew it wouldn't stay secret forever. The first crack appeared during a conference panel. Maria was on stage discussing creative ownership in modern marketing. Someone from the audience raised their hand. What do you think about Ember and Slate's approach with interactive storytelling? It's fresh, disruptive. Maria's smile faltered. She recovered quickly. Haven't heard of them. Must be new. But I knew. I knew that night she Googled us. And what she found was the beginning of her unraveling. Because I had clients. I had results. I had proof. The same brands that once praised her were now tagging us in their social campaigns. My silent work was making noise. And it wasn't just about the clients. It was about control. I chose the interns. I approved the designs. I signed the contracts. Every morning when I unlocked the office, I reminded myself I did this. I made this. But pride is a quiet poison. It seeps in. It convinces you you're safe. And that's when things go wrong. The first sign came as an email from a new client who had signed with us 2 weeks earlier.
Yesha.
Can we reschedule our Monday review call? We're having second thoughts. Maven reached out with a counter offer. It stung more than I expected. I told myself it was fine. That one client didn't define us. But then it happened again. Another client. Then a third. All of them suddenly reconsidering. I didn't have to guess what was happening. Maria had found out. And she was fighting back. I met with my lawyer the next day. You didn't sign any non-compete, he said. And your work files are clean. You're safe. But I wasn't worried about legal battles. I was worried about shadows. About sabotage that doesn't leave fingerprints. About clients being wooed back with discounts and promises she never made me. For the first time since I left Maven, I felt afraid. But I didn't stop. I pivoted. I started hosting free workshops online under Ember and Slate's banner. Topics like creativity without politics and the power of listening. We didn't sell anything, just shared. The viewership exploded. Designers, marketers, even small business owners showed up. They didn't know my backstory. They just knew that something about what we said felt true. Then came the day I opened my inbox and found it. An email from a partner at Maven. Not Maria. A different one. He wrote, "We need to talk. Confidentially. Are you available?"
I didn't know it yet.
But the next twist was already on its way. I didn't reply to that email right away. I read it once, twice, then stared at the screen like the pixels might rearrange into answers. We need to talk. Confidentially. It felt less like a message and more like a warning. Or an opportunity. I waited an hour before responding. Simple and clean. Available tomorrow. 10 a.m. at Red Elm Cafe. I didn't tell anyone. Not Mira, not Gideon, my close friend and newly hired strategist. Not even myself, really. I just showed up. He was already there when I walked in. Neil Winters. Maven's operations lead and Maria's longtime ally. Or so I thought. He didn't stand to greet me, just nodded at the seat across from him like we were strangers who knew each other too well. You've built something, he said without preamble, and Maria's furious. I didn't flinch. Letting him speak first was strategy. He took a sip of his espresso and looked out the window before continuing. She's been using company resources to chase your clients, offering them under-the-table incentives, lying about your IP. He pulled out his phone and showed me a screen. A spreadsheet. Names I recognized. She's also blocked 3 of your prospective deals from going through. One through a personal friend in procurement. Another by launching a shadow site using your exact workshop titles. My stomach clenched. That's not just unethical, he said. It's dangerous. I asked him what he wanted. He didn't hesitate. She's alienated half the board. They're looking for an exit. I want to help you take Maven down. From the inside. I stared at him. Neil was the kind of man who never moved unless the ground was already cracked. If he was jumping ship, it meant Maven wasn't sinking, it was already underwater. I didn't trust him. But I did trust motive. And right now, our motives were aligned. That evening, I met with Gideon in the office. I told him everything. His face was calm, but his eyes were calculating. "We can't just fight back," he said. "We have to finish this." We spent the next 3 weeks building what we called Project Revival. On the surface, it was a rebranding campaign, but behind the scenes, it was a trap. We designed a fake pitch for a fake client, a wellness startup with massive potential. We leaked it strategically, just enough for Maven to hear whispers. Sure enough, within days, one of our interns forwarded us a screen recording. Maria had presented our fake concept in a Maven deck to a real investor. Down to the font. We had her. I didn't go public. Not yet. I had something else planned. In the meantime, we focused on growth. Ember and Slate was becoming a movement. Word spread. Former Maven clients who had been wary of jumping ship now came quietly to us, asking for revised contracts. We said yes, but with conditions. No NDA clause that would silence us. No credits stripped from our work. We were done hiding. But then came the second twist. One of our oldest clients, a high-end fashion brand, called in a panic. "Aisha, someone sent us a package with photos of you from your Maven days, with time-stamped emails claiming you stole work. It's anonymous, but I already knew." Maria had escalated. She was weaponizing my past. Half the emails were real, but the context was twisted, cropped, and poisoned. It was meant to destroy trust. I didn't defend myself. Instead, I invited the client to visit our office in person. They came. I showed them my records, my journals, my folders. Dates, revisions, voice notes, all the work that proved the ideas were mine long before they were presented by anyone else. The client left silently. 3 hours later, they posted a photo on Instagram, their brand's logo beside ours with the caption, "Loyalty isn't a brand value. It's a truth." Maria had tried to turn the shadows against me, but I had built my walls out of glass. Just when I thought the war had reached its peak, Neil messaged me again. "Final board vote is next Friday. If it goes as expected, Maria's out. But she's planning something before then. Something big." I didn't sleep that night. By Monday morning, the attack came. Maven filed a cease and desist against Ember and Slate, a public accusation of intellectual theft. It was vague enough to plant doubt. Headlines popped up. Industry gossip turned into speculation.
Client froze.
Payment stalled. Our new intern quit. Even Myra's confidence shook. This was no longer about business. It was personal. I called Neil. "She wants fear," I told him. "So, let's give her exposure instead." We pulled every record we had, every timestamped file, every Slack screenshot, even the recorded Zoom call where Maria passed off my pitch as her own, barely bothering to change the file name. Then we sent it to one place, Brand Today, a widely read industry newsletter known for its brutal honesty. The exposé went live on a Thursday. By Friday morning, the article had 80,000 shares. Maria didn't show up to the Maven board vote. She didn't have to. The board removed her unanimously. It should have felt like victory. But I felt tired. Because while she lost her job, I had nearly lost my name. In the weeks that followed, the lawsuits disappeared. The clients returned. We got apology emails from people who had ghosted us during the storm. But something in me had shifted. I didn't want revenge anymore. I wanted independence. Legacy.
Truth.
That's when I decided to expand. Ember and Slate wasn't just going to be a rival agency. It would be a network, a refuge for quiet creatives who had been erased, talked over, pushed aside. We opened 2 satellite offices, launched a mentorship program for women in marketing, built a grant fund for freelancers dealing with workplace retaliation. And then, one quiet afternoon, as I sipped cold coffee and edited a new proposal, I got a letter. Handwritten. No return address. Inside was a note. "You may have won the battle, but I built the game." There was no signature. But I didn't need one. Maria was gone from Maven, but not from the industry. She had taken a consulting job overseas. Rebranded herself as a fixer. I placed the note in a folder labeled history. Not threat, not future, just past. And then I got back to work. Because this story wasn't over yet. For a while, it felt like we were finally breathing. The kind of breath you only take after surviving a storm you never asked for. Ember and Slate was thriving. Not just surviving, thriving. Our story had spread beyond the marketing world. We've been featured in 2 industry podcasts, invited to contribute to a business anthology about leadership, and even shortlisted for a Rising Women in Strategy award. But success doesn't erase fear. It just makes it easier to ignore until the next crack appears. And mine came wearing perfume and carrying a smile. Her name was Elise Brenner. She entered our lives as a client, representing a sleek, eco-luxury startup based out of San Francisco. Her emails were clean. Her tone was respectful. Her brand vision aligned perfectly with our philosophy. From day one, she praised our work. Fresh, she called it.
Honest.
Not filtered through boardroom jargon. And for months, things were smooth. Too smooth. One afternoon, after we signed a 6-month retainer with Elise's company, Mira knocked on my office door. Her face was pale. "You need to see this," she said, placing her laptop in front of me. It was a job listing, posted anonymously on a freelancer site. The brief? Nearly word for word what we had pitched Elise last week. Down to the visual language. I scrolled, pulse rising. And at the bottom of the listing, deliverables required before offer is finalized. They were crowdsourcing our ideas. Elise had taken our strategy and turned it into bait. I scheduled a call with her that same evening. She was calm, almost too calm. "I'm sorry you feel this way, Aisha," she said. "But we own the campaign outline. It's in the contract." I flipped through the document we had signed. Page 7. Clause 4B. All work created or discussed during the pre-contract phase becomes the intellectual property of the client upon retainer. It was hidden. Legal but immoral. She had played me. And worse, she had won. We pulled out of the contract the next morning. Publicly, we said it was a scheduling issue. Privately, I sent her a 1-line email. "You taught me a lesson. I won't forget it." She never replied. But that week, 2 more clients backed out. One citing strategic misalignment. Another, budget limitations. Elise hadn't just taken our work. She'd taken her knives to our name. I spent the next 3 days spiraling through self-doubt. Maybe I was too trusting. Maybe I wasn't built for this world. Maybe Maria was right. Maybe I lacked the instinct to survive the dirt beneath the gloss. But on the 4th day, I remembered Victor. Victor was a junior copywriter from my Maven days. Quiet.
Brilliant. Erased.
He had vanished after a layoff 2 years ago. But I still had his email. I reached out, not expecting anything. His reply came within hours. "I've been watching from the sidelines. You made something real. If you need help, I'm in." 2 more former colleagues followed. Then 5. Then 10. People I hadn't spoken to in years suddenly offering their time, their skills, their belief. Because it wasn't just my fight anymore. It was ours. We built a new division inside Ember and Slate, Glasswire. A transparency initiative for freelancers, creatives, and quiet builders. A place where they could track their contracts, flag unethical clauses, and access real legal resources. We partnered with a tech nonprofit that helped us launch a live tool, a scanner that detected exploitative language in contracts within seconds. We released it for free. The industry noticed. Articles poured in. Interviews. Panels. Elise didn't contact us again. But we heard from someone else, a whistleblower from her startup. Turns out, she wasn't just shady with us. She'd been under investigation for investor fraud. Our campaign wasn't the first she'd repackaged. It was the last. I didn't gloat. I didn't post. I just deleted her contact and returned to my work. And then came the moment I hadn't expected. A letter.
No stamps.
Just a crisp white envelope on my desk one morning with no name. Inside, a folded sheet of thick paper with embossed lettering. "Congratulations, Aisha. We'd like to honor you at the Industry Vanguard Awards this fall. Please RSVP. Dress code, formal. Impact required. My hands shook. I hadn't been looking for awards. I just wanted dignity. But somewhere between silence and survival, I had become a name that couldn't be ignored. Mira cried when I told her. Gideon lifted me off the floor in a bear hug. I laughed through all of it until I got the guest list. Maria's name was there, as a panelist, representing a new consulting firm specializing in narrative rehabilitation for corporate brands. Of course she was. I considered backing out, but that would have meant she still controlled the room.
So I went.
The event was held in a hotel ballroom that smelled like money and subtle power. Everything sparkled. But I wasn't the same girl who used to sit in the back row pretending to be invisible. I wore black. Simple. Confident.
No glitter.
Just grit. When I walked onto the stage to accept the award, the applause felt far away. What I heard instead was my own heartbeat.
Calm. Steady. Meaning.
I didn't give a long speech.
Just a story.
I told them about silence, about being overlooked, about how building something from scratch doesn't start with ambition. It starts with refusal. A refusal to be erased. A refusal to shrink. A refusal to believe that integrity doesn't win. The room stood. Maria didn't. But I wasn't looking at her. That night, I sat by my window again. Just like the night I quit Maven. Same streetlights. Same shadows. Different girl. There was still more to build. Still more stories to tell. Because revenge was never the endgame. Legacy was. And this was just the beginning. 6 months passed. Autumn came slowly, like a second chance. Ember and Slate was no longer a whisper in the industry. It was a name people typed into search bars, attached to pitch decks, mentioned in meetings I would never attend. Our inbox was never empty. Awards kept coming. But the real win wasn't on a shelf. It was in the stories we heard from young creatives, people who'd been pushed aside, told to wait their turn, and were now making their own rules. I should have felt proud. Complete. Safe. But legacy has shadows too, especially when it grows too fast. It started small. A missed file delivery. Then a delay from one of our oldest vendors, followed by a cryptic email from our web hosting provider. Please review recent login activity. I checked. Someone had tried to breach our server 3 times in the last 2 weeks. Same IP address. Unknown device. The activity was masked, but not invisible. Then came the deeper cut. An anonymous blog post appeared on a mid-level industry forum. Title: The Myth of the Maverick. Is Aisha Q. Just another brand story? It read like a case study.
Polished.
Icy. Loaded with misleading quotes from former colleagues, stitched timelines, and subtle suggestions that I had manipulated the narrative all along. It didn't scream sabotage. It whispered doubt. The kind that creeps into boardrooms and inboxes and turns trust to fog. I closed my laptop, sat still for 10 minutes. Then I made a list of everyone who had enough access to write something like that. It was a short list. 3 names. One was Maria. One was Elise. The third? Neil Winters. The man who had claimed to help me. I hadn't spoken to Neil in months. Not since the board vote. He'd quietly disappeared after Maria's exit, never returning my last email. Now I had to ask myself, had he ever truly switched sides? Or had he simply chosen the winning one at the time? I didn't confront him. Not yet. Instead, I started tracing backwards. Mira helped. Gideon did too. Together, we reviewed every document Neil had ever touched, every client referral he'd passed along, every backdoor he might have left open. And somewhere in the fine print of a third-party data-sharing clause, we found it. Neil had created a silent shell company registered under a false name. And that shell company owned the hosting server where our fake pitch, the one Maria stole, had originally been leaked. It wasn't Maria who'd stolen the pitch. It was Neil. He'd baited both sides, sold the conflict, played the puppet master. And now he was ghostwriting my downfall. The betrayal hit differently. Maria was expected. Elise was calculated. But Neil had positioned himself as a fixer, a friend, a mirror of my ambition. And now he was my biggest threat. I didn't cry. I strategized. We didn't go to the press. We didn't scream on social media. Instead, we built Operation Echo, a digital footprint campaign designed to highlight the exact timeline of Ember and Slate's rise. We layered metadata, verified timestamps, cross-checked correspondence, and embedded it all inside a custom-built interactive experience that let viewers walk through our journey, mistake by mistake, win by win, day by day. No drama, just data. Then we released it. We didn't frame it as a defense. We framed it as an invitation. Here's our blueprint. You decide what's real. It exploded. We were contacted by ethics professors, startup incubators, even corporate psychologists. They all said the same thing. You've just redefined transparency in branding. And Neil? He stayed quiet, deleted his LinkedIn. His blog vanished within days. But I wasn't looking for apologies. I was clearing the air. Just as things began to stabilize again, the real twist arrived. It came in the form of a woman. Older, elegant, steady voice. She walked into our office one rainy Thursday and asked for me by name. My name is Kieran, she said. I used to mentor Maria. Years ago, before Maven even existed.
Ist der her, uncertain.
She smiled. She came to me last week, Kieran said. And I think you deserve to know what she's planning. My stomach dropped. Kieran wasn't here to threaten. She was here because something had shifted. Maria's building something new, she explained. Not another agency. A platform. One that leverages AI to mine pitch decks, restructure ideas, and sell them back to agencies in fragments. Her model is smart, ruthless, dangerous. And the worst part? She had beta tested it on Ember and Slate. That blog post? The breach? The lost files? All test cases. We weren't her enemy. We were her prototype. And now she had investors. This time, I did feel afraid. Because this wasn't just about me anymore. It was about the industry. About trust. About creators being turned into data points, their originality shredded into algorithms that would be sold without credit. We had to act. But how do you fight a system designed to steal quietly? You shine light where it hurts. We partnered with a whistleblower protection group. We documented every trace of Maria's test runs. Then we built a workshop series called The Invisible Theft. Each session broke down how creative ideas are stolen, legally. We didn't name her. We didn't need to. The workshops were full. So full that agencies started pulling their files off the test platforms Maria's company was using. Her funding dried up. 2 backers dropped out. The beta version of her tool shut down within 30 days. I didn't celebrate. I slept. For the first time in a year, I slept more than 4 hours. When I woke up, I remembered something Gideon said months ago. The cost of building something real isn't failure. It's loneliness. He was right. Because even when we win, we lose something. Innocence. Trust. The right to stay soft. But I wasn't bitter. I was ready. Because now I wasn't just building a company. I was building protection. I was building legacy. I was building a world where no one else had to learn kindness through battle. And I still had one section left to write. The day everything finally settled, it rained. Not the dramatic, stormy kind of rain, just a soft, steady drizzle, the kind that washes dust off old things and makes the air smell like something new. I stood at the window of our expanded office space, now 2 full floors in a building we used to only dream of renting a desk in, and watched the world move without flinching. The city was the same, but I wasn't. There was no final battle, no headline victory, no explosive moment of revenge. Just a quiet shift in gravity. Maria's platform had collapsed, not from my attack, but from the truth refusing to stay buried. Neil had gone silent, and Elise was reportedly entangled in civil suits involving data misuse. One by one, the echoes faded. But I wasn't watching for them anymore. I was watching the ones coming in. Young creatives from all over the country had started applying to our mentorship pipeline. Our inbox was full of portfolios wrapped in hope. Messages that said things like, I've been told to wait my turn for years. I'm done waiting. Or, I saw your story. I thought I was the only one. They weren't. That's what made this matter. But legacy isn't built in inboxes or headlines. It's built in the quiet, in the decisions no one sees, and sometimes in the people you almost forgot. One of those people showed up again on a Wednesday afternoon. I was reviewing a batch of applications when Mira knocked. "A visitor," she said softly. "Says you might not remember him. His name's Yusuf." Yusuf. It hit me like a thread pulling back time. He'd been a junior analyst in Maven's back office. The kind of employee who never made noise, never got noticed. But once, years ago, he'd stopped me in the hallway and said, "That pitch? It was yours, wasn't it?" I told Mira to send him in. He looked older now. A little thinner, wiser. But his eyes were the same, quiet, observant. He sat without ceremony and placed a small envelope on my desk. "I kept this," he said. "I think it belongs to you." Inside was an old copy of my very first pitch deck, the one Maria had presented as her own. I found it in the archives. After you left. I didn't know what to do with it then. I stared at the faded title page. My words. My design. My beginning. "I do now," I said. Yusuf smiled. "You changed things, you know." I nodded. "So can you." He stood to leave, but paused at the door. "There's something else," he said. "You're being nominated for the Iden Award." My breath caught. That was the highest honor in our field, not just for creativity, but for impact. "How do you know?" I asked. "I work with one of the committee members now," he replied. "They've been watching. Quietly. They think you've redefined leadership." For the first time in a long time, I felt tears rise, not from pain, not from exhaustion, but from sheer, stunned recognition. I whispered, "Thank you," but he was already gone. That night, I stayed late in the office, surrounded by soft lamplight and the hum of quiet success. I opened the drawer of my desk, the same drawer I used to hide notebooks in back at Maven, and took out a journal. I flipped through old pages. Notes from meetings I was never credited for. Lists of ideas. Sketches of logos. Little scraps of a girl trying to stay whole in a room that wanted her invisible. At the back of the journal, I found a page I had written in the early days of Ember and Slate. It said, "If no one will give me the room, I'll build the house." I had done it, but it wasn't just a house anymore. It was a home. We hosted a company retreat 2 weeks later. Not in a hotel, but in a cabin by the coast, surrounded by trees and the sound of something older than strategy. It was just 15 of us.
No buzzwords.
No press releases. Just real conversations about work, purpose, boundaries, and healing. We cooked together. Shared stories.
Laughed. Cried.
One of our new hires, Anna, said during dinner, "This is the first job I've had where I don't have to pretend to be someone else." And in that moment, I knew this was my victory. Not a speech. Not a trophy.
But this.
Freedom. 1 week later, I got a letter from my mother. We hadn't spoken since before I left Maven. She never understood why I walked away. We'd grown distant. But the letter was short. It said, "I saw the panel. I read your interview. I'm sorry I didn't understand then. I'm proud of you now. Love always." I didn't cry when I read it. I just folded it carefully and placed it between the pages of my old journal. Another closure. Another chapter done. And then one last twist. It came from Gideon. He pulled me aside one evening after everyone had left. "You remember the idea we shelved last year?" he asked. "The learning platform for creatives?" I nodded. We had parked it due to resources. "Well," he said, placing a folder on my desk, "we just got funding. Quietly. From an anonymous benefactor. Wants no credit. Just wants us to build it." I opened the folder. Inside was a single check. More than enough. I looked at him. "Who?" I asked. He just smiled. "Let's just say someone finally decided to invest in the future they once ignored." And that was it. We built it. A learning platform. A mentorship portal. A creative sanctuary. We called it Blueprint because every voice needs a place to begin. And Ember and Slate? It kept growing. Not louder, just stronger. Like roots. 1 year later, I stood on another stage, not to accept an award, but to introduce a cohort of young women stepping into their first year of work through our incubator program. I didn't need to talk about Maria, or Neil, or Elise. They were history now. Footnotes in a story too big to stay bitter. I simply looked at the room, full of faces lit up with courage, and said, sometimes, the world will try to erase you. But if you write loud enough in your own truth, eventually, they'll have to read. And they did. They read every word, and kept turning pages.